This is not a planner walkthrough, a routine dump, or a productivity hack video. I love those videos as much as the next guy. But this video is a 6-week behavioral science-backed system that makes routine stick, organization sustainable, and consistency almost automatic. Let's build it together week by week while other people are tucking themselves in for November. I talked about this a little bit in my October video, but once we get to this time of year, so close to January, a lot of people are just gonna throw their hands up and say, let's wait till January to make substantial changes. This is commonly known as the goal deferral cycle, and it pairs with this kind of bias that we have where we feel like we have been this way for the course of 2025, and because we've been this way for the last 10 months or so, like what the heck, let me just continue on for the next 2 months and I'll wait till January to make substantial changes. That wastes the next 60 days. Instead, let's take the next 6 weeks and follow this step-by-step process so that you can enter 2026 with organized, calm, and sustainable systems that'll take you into the new year. We have a lot to get to, so grab a notebook, a coffee, and let's start with week 1, assessing your values. It is pointless to watch videos or walk through an entire 6-week system to set up the perfect life for someone else. Take the first week to really understand what truly matters to you. That's commonly known as your values. Values tend to be enduring beliefs about what truly matters to you. They affect how we think, feel, and act. And if known and used properly, they become this kind of internal compass that shapes your decisions, behaviors, and motivation. Values are the general principles that define the kind of life that you want to live and the kind of person that you want to be. So you can see why it's truly valuable to start by fully understanding your value set, which is why I integrate values-based assessments into my work as a clinical psychologist, as well as my work with clients as a productivity coach. And if we've never met before, hi, my name is Dr. Jamie. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist who focuses on performance optimization without sacrificing your mental health, which is why I developed this 6-week system. And if you want to know more about it, click on the link down below. Let's get into the tactics of identifying your values. I use a 4-part process when I'm working with clients who are trying to identify their core values. Your core values tend to be the 5 or 6 concepts that really drive what matters to you. The first technique is using some sort of standardized measure for values assessment. There are several reputable measures that are available to the public through the internet. I tend to prefer the University of Pennsylvania VIA Character Strength Survey developed by the Positive Psychology Center at UPenn. I will link it down below. One of the reasons I like the VIA Character Strength Survey over other standardized measures of values is that the VIA focuses on behaviors. It asks you what is typical of you in the way that you act or show up in the world. And it also has a pretty comprehensive list of character strengths. It identifies 24 different character strengths, and it doesn't necessarily say that you are good or bad at a particular character strength. It focuses more on what might come more easily to you and what areas you may want to strengthen or potentially are just using less often. Here's a list of the 24 character strengths identified through the VIA survey. Things like curiosity, love of learning, bravery, kindness, fairness are some examples of the character strengths assessed with this survey. It's a totally free survey. You do need to create a login, but doing things through official institutions like this increases the likelihood that there is some sort of ethical oversight with the use of your data. Moving on to some semi-structured ways of assessing your values. Another way of assessing your values that is commonly used across the internet, as well as through official empirically supported treatments within the behavioral health sphere, is assessing your values through the use of a values list. You can find these throughout the internet, and it's less important that it's coming from a particular reputable institution, since this is just a list of words that represent commonly held values. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, has a good one on his website. You can also find some in therapy workbooks, specifically in workbooks focused on acceptance and commitment-based therapies, as well as some cognitive and behavioral therapy workbooks. And I also have one on my website. If you're interested in getting a PDF of the values list, you can also find that link down below. Once you've found a values list, you simply read through the different values, and I like to tell my clients to circle anything that resonates with them, anything that they find important or meaningful in their life. Usually they'll circle a dozen or even 24 words. That's way too many words, and that probably doesn't represent your core values. I often find that when people are circling 12, 20, 26 words, it's more likely that you're identifying groups of words that are thematically related. Oh, there's no need for that. We tend to find that a lot of these words tend to group together around a theme. I'll give you some of mine as an example. I tend to circle words like competence, excellence, achievement. Those tend to cluster around the theme of mastery, which I know is one of my core values. I really like to do things and do things well. And because this type of synthesis takes a little bit of work and self-reflection, that's why it takes a few days to really dig down into your core values. Sometimes it's helpful for people to circle all of the words that they want to begin with, take that list and put it aside, and complete the next 2 exercises before they come back to identifying their theme clusters. The next 2 exercises focus on people. First, think about the people that you really admire. What are their personality traits? Who do they surround themselves with? What have they achieved? What kinds of things do they have? And yes, I said, what kinds of things do they have? Because for some people, things or material objects is important to them. When you're doing this analysis, it's important for you to not be judgmental about the things that are really important to you. For example, one of my core values is beauty and aesthetics. I like the way that things look. And for some people, that's really not something that matters to them. It might even be considered frivolous. But if I get stuck on prejudging my own values and what matters to me, I'm not going to be able to get a clear picture of what my values actually are. And this is really essential to the entire 6-week system. Moving on to our last exercise, rather than focusing on other people, what are the times in your life where you felt the most satisfied, the highest level of joy, or the highest levels of pride? This is going to help bring to light your preferences as well as what you think are major achievements or things that you consider really meaningful in your life. Now that we have our values, let's move on to week 2, where we examine our roles, responsibilities, and priorities. If you have another R word for that, drop it in the comment section down below because I love alliteration. Week 1 had a lot of internal focus. Now we're going to look externally and try to understand what the world is demanding of us. That is the reality of your roles and responsibilities. They put a demand on your resources, on your time, on your energy, on your attention. So let's get a full understanding of what those roles and responsibilities are. An easy way to do this is to take out a blank sheet of paper and divide it into 7 sections. You could also download a blank weekly schedule. I also have one on my website, or you could always start a new Google Calendar and do this digitally. You start by going through your week and identifying repeating tasks or responsibilities or obligations that you have during the week. For example, many of us work a regular 9-to-5 job, so I put in a 9-to-5 block Monday through Friday, or an 8-to-4 block for me, indicating my job responsibilities. We're not going to go too deep into identifying your roles and responsibilities at work. That might make this video 2 hours long, but if you're interested in a video on that, leave a comment in the comments section below, and I will try to get to that in the next few weeks. Identify what else you're responsible for or how else you spend your time during the week. For example, I get up at 5:30, make my son's breakfast, get myself ready to head over to the gym. I'm at the gym from 6:30 to 7:30, commute back home, get myself ready for work, and then head over there till about 4 o'clock. That is when I transition over to pick up my son from school. I come back home. I start working on this YouTube channel. There are some days that are slightly different. On Thursdays, I have Japanese lessons. On Saturday, I spend most of my time going to some sort of high school sporting event. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I do the laundry. Every day, I'm doing at least 30 minutes of Japanese practice, and I tend to watch about 45 minutes of Netflix with my husband every day. Once I get through a typical week, I start to pull out some of what I call my life domains. That's different areas in my life that are represented by what I do in a given week. Things like my sleep-wake cycle, the fact that I go to the gym every day, and the meal planning that I do on Sundays all fall into this category of health and fitness. I have responsibilities related to my son, making him breakfast in the morning, picking him up from school, and attending his sporting events on Saturdays. And I also spend time with my husband every day of the week for a weirdly short period of time. More on that later. So all of these cluster together into a family, nuclear family, interpersonal relationship group, or in non-psychologist speak, just like being part of a family. I'm also at work from 8 to 4, 5 days a week, so I have my 9 to 5 cluster. I spend a good deal of time working on this channel. On Sundays, I'm recording. 4 days out of the week, I'm working on something related to the productivity psychologist. So the productivity psychologist is another life domain. Once I've accounted for everything in my week, I take a step back and ask myself, what do I do on a monthly basis? Every month, I also do our family budgeting. So that creates another life domain, kind of the financial responsibilities that I have. And from there, you can take a step even further and ask yourself, what are things that you do every quarter? I do some type of maintenance on my car, and there's some household responsibilities that happen every quarter, things like changing my toothbrush head, changing filters in the AC system, which actually I do once a month, so that kind of falls into the once a month category. But this is highlighting this additional life domain, physical spaces, objects that I own that take some sort of resources from me, my time, my energy, my money, my attention. So my house, my car, those physical objects are another life domain that contributes to my roles and responsibilities. In the end, people tend to have 8 to 10 life domains, and you might see these represented in things like the Wheel of Life, a life assessment tool that's pretty widely used. But this process actually helps you identify your specific life domains. So rather than using generic life domains that are identified for use with just anybody, I like going through the deliberate process to understand my specific life domains. Because one size fits all solutions is what I think separates internet gurus from people that have taken deliberate efforts to receive formal training or have formal experience in working through individual life circumstances with a variety of individual people. But that doesn't mean that there isn't value in using this type of tool. In fact, I love this tool, and it's the next step that I use in this process because I'd like us to identify how we're doing in each of our life domains. And humans tend to respond really well to visuals, so I like using this Wheel of Life. I just like using it with your identified life domains rather than these generic ones. Before we can accurately rate ourselves in each of our life domains, we need to identify what a 10 looks like for us. In each of these life wedges, identify what a perfect situation would be for you. For example, in physical spaces, would you want a perfectly neat house with everything in its place, a well-vacuumed car, always with a full tank of gas and never missing an oil change? Or are you like me, where the physical state of my house is very important, but the physical state of my car means next to nothing for me? I do want it to have its oil changed, but sometimes it is a hot mess. I don't care, I make no apologies for it. Once you've identified what a 10 looks like in each of these domains, you can move forward with a highly personalized assessment of how you're doing in each of those life domains. All right, you have one more thing to do during week 2, and that is to prioritize your life domains. It's rare that I quote the Bible here or 1960s pop music, but for everything, there is a season. And the things that were important to me when I was 25 are very different than the things that are important to me at 35. If I was focused on getting a promotion in my 9 to 5 job, the priority that I would put on that job would be placed as a higher priority than growing my YouTube channel. If I had a newborn baby, family might be at the very top of my list, and things like the productivity psychologist might be way down near the bottom. Take your list of life domains and put them in order of priority. I know this could be hard. This is the time to ask yourself these hard questions. When push comes to shove, What part of my life is more important right now? You have all the components you need to slay week 3. You have your values, you understand what drives you and what is important to you, what you consider awesome and good for your life. You also know how you're spending your time, all of the roles and responsibilities that you have, and you also know how relatively important those are to each other. With this amount of information, you can move forward to create effective goals. Time and time again, when I work with high-performing individuals, they have dozens of goals that they're trying to attack all at the same time. And that's just ineffective and inefficient. Your resources as a human are limited. Most of us mere mortals are constrained by our resources. We have a finite level of time, energy, attention, and for most of us, money. So being choosy about your goals increases the likelihood that you'll actually achieve those goals. And we're about organized, calm, and sustainable productivity on this channel. So now's the time to critically evaluate all of the goals that you want to achieve in the next year and start to think about how well they align with your values, your season of life, the roles and responsibilities, and what is being asked of you today, as well as your priorities. You can take a look at your wheel of life and decide that you want to perfect one area of your life. You could be at an 8 and you want to bring yourself up to a 10, and you want to invest some time in developing the systems to ensure that you're building on where you're already successful. Some people say, I'm at a critical point right now in this area of my life. Say, I'm at a 2 in my family life. I've told myself that I want to prioritize my relationship with my spouse and my relationship with my children, and I'm not doing very well in that area at all. I have a long way to go, and I want to focus on that in the coming year. There are several different ways to approach identifying 2 or 3 big rocks or big goals to get after in the coming year. And this is the kind of one-on-one work that we'll be doing in my 6-week live cohort class. If you want more information on that, there are also links to that down below. And I also have several videos on this channel focusing on the importance of selecting the right goals. If done right, this will take a few days, maybe not the entire 3rd week. And if you've identified 2 or 3 big goals to get after over a long period of time, say 12 to 15 months, it's time to move on to week 4, where we focus on habits to ensure that we're meeting those goals. Now, you didn't come this far to invest in generic habits like taking cold showers or drinking lemon water in the morning. This is the week that you identify habits that are consistent with your values, your priorities, and your goals. All the things that we've been working on to this point. Fortunately, as a behavioral scientist, this is my happy space, figuring out how to increase or decrease specific behaviors and how to make those become so automatic that it decreases the amount of energy activation needed to actually do the thing. Also known on the internet as calm productivity, systems not habits, gentle discipline. Many of those things have solid roots in behavioral science. Since we took the time to identify 2 or 3 goals in week 3, let's take that goal and break it down in terms of strategy and tactics. Let's say your goal is to do a 200-pound 1-rep max deadlift. Humble brag, 205. That might not seem like a lot to some people, but let's roll with it in this example. If your goal is to have a 200-pound 1-rep max for your deadlift, there are publicly available strategies developed by experts in the field, including physiologists, professional power lifters, even research in military performance has focused on how you can increase your lower body lift strength. So for strategy, we're going to look to the expert. The strategy is going to be something like progressive overload that's gradually increasing the volume or load during your strength training sessions. Or they might recommend things like improving your technique and your bar pathway. Those are all strategies, general philosophies to get you closer to your goal. Now let's look at tactics, taking the strategies and translating that into specific behaviors done at specific times or intervals. For progressive overload, that could be things like increasing weights or reps on a weekly basis. That list of specific tactics are the targets for your habits. If your tactics are a weekly regular lifting session, 1 day a week of focusing on technique, and 1 day a week where you're getting to that 85-95% max. That is 3 days a week that you're hitting the gym, focus on this specific movement. The habit that you have to build is going to the gym on a regular basis. More specifically, 3 days a week, focusing on the deadlift. This level of specificity is what is needed before moving on to week 5, where we start to develop the systems that support the habits. Within the 6-week framework, systems serve to assist us in 3 ways. They can help us be more organized, they can help us be more calm in our execution, or they can make that behavior more sustainable. I told you this video was going to get deep, so let's dive into organization systems and the essential components that you need for a fully organized life. Now that you know your values, your priorities, you've identified your goals, you've broken them down into the specific habits that you need to develop, and you want to move forward creating systems to support the kind of life that you want to live. Part of the deliberate design of a fully aligned life is having a sense of peace and order with all of the different components of your life, which is why it's important to have these 4 components of a personal organization system, and that's going to help support your habit formation, your long-term goals, alignment with your values, and consistency with your priorities. I call this the tiers system, and that involves having a reliable place to house all of your tasks, having some way of capturing what life is demanding of you in an inbox. And it might be helpful to actually have like a physical inbox as well as some sort of digital inbox. It's also essential to have some sort of event management system. Things like a Google Calendar is the easiest and most convenient way of managing your time-based events. It's beneficial to have some way of organizing your reference material, the things of life that you'll have to come back to from time to time, but you don't need to readily have available at all times, but you want to be able to find them when you need them. That's things like your account number for your electricity bill. The S in this framework is the systems part of it, how things move from your inbox to your task box to your event management system, and then into your reference area. Having a well-developed personal organization system is going to help us fully solidify the habits that are going to get us closer to our goals, which are consistent with our priorities and our values. The specific habits that we identified can be entered in as specific tasks. They can also be scheduled now that you know what is demanded of you on a weekly basis. You also have identified white spaces where we can plug in the specific actions that are needed to develop those habits. You could also store and, more importantly, locate the resources that you used to back up your strategies and tactics towards sustaining those habits and goals. I have specific videos on the tier system, and I will link that up above. As humans, we tend to require some resetting and redirecting from time to time. In behavioral science, this is known as regression toward the mean, or how we tend to regress back toward our usual operating procedures, especially when we're trying to move in a different direction or do things slightly differently. Because we tend to drift away from behavioral changes, from time to time, it's important to do what's sometimes called an azimuth check. This is a deliberate assessment of where you are right now and an opportunity for you to ask yourself if you need to course correct as you're moving forward toward your goal. This review and reflection cycle contributes to systems that improve calm by knowing that you have a trusted, regular cadence in which you're evaluating whether or not you're still on track. So rather than asking yourself on a daily or weekly basis, am I still good here? You're doing it on a regular basis, and you could offload some of that cognitive strain by knowing that you are going to reevaluate how you're doing on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis, and you don't have to use your brain power right now thinking over and over whether or not you're doing the right thing. When thinking about your review and analysis of your life operating systems, it's helpful to break down what makes sense for a cadence of review. What kinds of things do you want to examine on a weekly basis? What things are better examined on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, or even an annual basis? Systems evaluation and tracking methods take up some of those resources that we've been talking about. So in order to ensure the system is sustainable, we want to make sure that we're reviewing things at a frequency that makes sense without putting any additional unnecessary strain on ourselves. And that brings us to week 6, how we set up our environment for organized, calm, and sustainable productivity. There's an entire body of literature on how we set up our spaces and the impact that that has on our performance, as well as our mental health and well-being. By week 6, we have a pretty clear view of what we're trying to accomplish and the type of life that we want to have. This is the perfect time to look around your physical spaces and your digital spaces to see if they're set up in such a way to increase the organization, calm, or sustainability of the life that you're trying to lead. That might include moving things around or straight getting rid of things. It might include adding an additional system for how you process your email or how you sort your photos. Or it could be something as simple as laying out your gym clothes in the morning or meal prepping on a Sunday. Anything that you can do to make it easy for yourself to do the right thing. This is what behavioral scientists call decision architecture, setting up your space or your systems in such a way to nudge you in the right direction. Now look, I know this seems like a lot, and frankly, it's not for everybody. This is a system for individuals that have that time and space and almost the luxury of being able to take a deliberate pause, to take 6 weeks to make a meaningful and lasting change in their life. And this level of investment up front helps to create an organized, calm, and sustainable system fully aligned with the person you want to become. I am super excited to be hosting the very first Aligned Through Design cohort, where we go through this entire 6-week process as a group, week by week. This program includes weekly live cohort sessions as well as weekly office hours with me, where I walk through some of your individualized questions. And there's also lots of additional resources, a workbook, some Notion templates, and together we'll go into 2026 calm, focused, and ready. If you're watching this on the day the video is released, the cohort is open now for registration. We start on November 9th, 2025. If you're watching this after that cohort has started, but you're interested in starting a new cohort, maybe in 2026 or beyond, leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're interested in videos where I take a deeper dive into each of these 6 components of the Align Through Design method, I will leave a playlist right here.